Now, when we get to this section of the brackets that are actually holding the light pole together, I'm going to go ahead and grab the top one here and take a look at it. And if I go ahead and go to grab my polygons, switch to edge mode, and then go ahead and right click extrude and adjust my width, you'll notice that I'm not getting the expected results that I was seeing earlier sometimes. What the reason why is because I have not reset my Xform for this object. And so what we would expect to see is a nice, three edges of control on this object by using the extrude tool. But unfortunately, it's not working correctly as intended. And that happens a lot of times when you're working with primitives. You may find yourself where, using the extrude tool doesn't work correctly. So in order to fix that, you should know right away what is actually causing it, and that is probably because the object's transform has been messed up. So to fix that, we're going to go ahead and go to the Utilities tab and make sure that we have Reset Xform turned on, and go ahead and click on Reset Selected, and then go back into our edit mode. Now you'll notice that even all the polygons got flipped and all sorts of weirdness happened, and that's because we may have created the shape from using a copy from another version of a cylinder, or even duplicated it from something else. And so sometimes when you do that, you can actually mess up the geometry just a little bit. But using a Reset Xform will basically reset all those parameters back to their default state, and we can go ahead and just right click Convert to Editable Poly. And so to fix those faces that are all flipped backwards, I'm going to go ahead and go back into polygon mode and then just go ahead and press the flip button. And that's going to go ahead and reset everything back to a very, very basic shape. And so if we go ahead and grab the top and bottom face like we had originally tried, I can go ahead and, with those edges selected, right click Extrude. And this is going to basically bring it right back to, sort of like a very basic setting that a cylinder should have when we're working with it. So there we go. That's gone ahead and fixed it using the Reset Xform. And you'll probably run into that quite a bit when you're working with this. So just always remember to do that. Anytime that you try and run an extrude calculation, insets, bevels, chamfers, lots of those calculations can be really, really messy when you first try them, and that may be simply because you have to reset the Xform. So we can go ahead and hit Turbo Smooth now. And one other little extra step that I'll add to this process is, if I'm creating this for a game asset, for example, what I'm going to want to do eventually is I'll probably wind up using these little bracket pieces as part of my low polygon object. So I may just sort of think about that in the end, and that there's going to be a lot of this geometry that, kind of as I go back and forth, you'll see is basically buried just underneath the inside of this pole. And so if I was making this for a game, and then eventually I was going to go ahead and take this into using it as my low polygon object later down the road, what I would have is I would have a whole lot of wasted UV space in here. And so just a quick tool that I can do is I can go ahead and grab both of these interfaces again. I'm going to go ahead and inset them just a tiny little bit. And while I'm doing the inset, I'm going to go ahead and exit the isolation as well. And I'll go ahead and set that again. And really all I'm looking for is I want to make sure that as I toggle back and forth between wireframe, is that my inset isn't too far out or too far in. But basically it's just going to sort of go just inside the parameters of the main cylindrical pole that this is attached to, and go ahead and press OK. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete those faces out. And so considering that none of those interfaces are going to be taken into consideration with the turbo smoothing calculation, this should be fine. But that way I'm not going to have a lot of wasted UV space if I decide later on I want to use this geometry as my low polygon object. Now anytime that we do use the Reset Xform, that will lose the fact that it was an instance. So if you've gone ahead and done that, you will need to go ahead and recreate the instance of that object and replace it back to where it needs to go. So in order to take this little bracket connector piece that we have here and line it up with this metal plating, we can very quickly just go back into the hierarchy tab, and very similar to how we did earlier with these little bolt pieces, just go ahead and go up to the top under Effect Pivot Only. We'll go ahead and center it out to the object. Just go ahead and click Center to Object. And then now using the Align tool, I'll go ahead and align it to that plate as well, and go ahead and set this to X, Y, and Z. Press Apply. And then now using the Mirror tool, I'll go ahead and mirror this down on the Z axes and go ahead and press OK. And so now we have a nice uniform little bracket holder piece right there that's going to connect to that plate.